Good evening. Welcome to Piqued. This is a meetup for electronic music makers and enthusiasts. I'm your MC, Corey Luna. On AV, we have Rich Hogben. And we are hosted here at Supply Frame in San Francisco. Tonight, we feature two musical artists, Lentczner and Lachlan Fletcher. They'll be playing a duet tonight. Starting in one, we'll be having an interview with them both in between, and then we'll go into the second set. So please have Mark and Lachlan come to the stage. Check, check. Mark Lentczner, Lachlan Fletcher, everybody. So guys, tell us a little bit about your set tonight. Tell us, start off with, how did you two come together to start this project?
Mark asked me to. I walked into tonight and I thought it was quite poetic because the first time we played together was in an office. And then the first time we played just together, the two of us, was also in an office, a different office. And it has culminated in tonight in a third office with people who mostly don't work here. But Mark and I connected in a community event called Resonant Frequencies, which I'm sure a lot of performers at this event participate in and connected. And Mark was kind enough to ask if we wanted to play together. We jammed a couple times, and things came together well enough that we wanted to pursue a couple ideas through to things that looked like real pieces, and that's what we're playing tonight.
I guess I'll add to that. The first time I heard Lachlan, he plays very different kind of music than I normally play. But when we got around to hanging out and talking, I realized that we approached music in a pretty similar way with a lot of thought, which is why I asked him to come play.
You didn't finish that thought. The first time Mark saw me play, he did not like it. He did not like it.
I was like, what is this guy? I don't know. It's a lot about context, which is what we are.
Which is fair. It's a fair criticism. It's fine.
No, it's not. Did you have a...
And tell us a little bit about how you did your setup tonight, how you are playing from here into each other.
So first off, the piece was called 13 Chairs. And if any of you were counting it out, the fundamental pulse of the whole thing is in 13/16, which is not a trivial meter to play. And so I guess tonight, in that piece, I'm sending Lachlan a clear pulse because in order for everything to stay synced metrically, we have to actually have synchronization between them. So in this piece, there's just metrical sync. But what's going on a lot is playing off between each other. So metrically, it's a very complex piece. There's fine pulse of 13. Lachlan's playing something in 20. I play sections in 6/8, 4/4, 10/16, and 11. And those are all polymetric against the 13, which is why I was probably standing there looking like I was going to scream, trying to count it all out. So it's complex.
So you're really calculating and you're really timing yourself with every beat.
So it depends on the section. So there's a great section where we're playing off each other. Lachlan has created a melody, and then I'm playing rhythmically against that melody that he's created on the fly. Both of our work has a lot of improvisational elements to them. This is not a through-composed piece. I mean, there's my half of the score. It's a bunch of notes. There are sections at the end which are all metrically worked out in horrendous detail. So here the playing off between each other is about meter between the two parts. Do you want to add to that?
If you've ever tried to play polyrhythms, it's like trying to complete two different sentences at the same time. It's like incredibly challenging what Mark did in this piece, Mark does all the hard work. Like I'm mostly leaning on electronics, but yeah, in terms of like what the interplay is, I think that there is a lot of trying to get to the next difficult rhythmic phrase and trying to figure out, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to signal those things to each other without necessarily having something super, super structured.
And is there a particular element of idea that you have between the two of you for this set?
I would also, yes. So the two pieces that we did, the first piece was definitely, I would say, I hope it's fair to say, more in Mark's bailiwick than mine. The second piece is going to sound like something more typically that I would perform, and we each tried to figure out something that was material to contribute to each other's, like our main compositional practices, that would make it significantly different. So the piece that we're going to perform, that is the next piece, which sounds more like my typical work, it doesn't actually sound like my typical work, at least not to my ear. And this piece, I don't think sounds a lot like what Mark would release on his own. That was kind of, I think, the primary idea that we were pursuing with playing these two pieces, and so it's quite nice to be able to play them back to back.
I would say, a lot of my work always generally has a very strong rhythmic component, rarely something as complex and insane as that. What I like about both pieces, and I don't know if you could, to me, is that this one's very rhythmic, but there's a sense, especially in the middle, before that big drop in the break, when the piece begins to feel like a texture and not a rhythm. There's the stuff, the tonal pieces that Lachlan has, there is this huge amount of rhythmic blather going on, but it reaches this height where it feels like a texture, which is a lot like Lachlan's work. And then I think you should listen for in the second piece, which is primarily textural, right? There's this sort of body of sound, but then listen underlying it where there are parts that are coming out rhythmic, where I'm pulling in rhythmic parts. So I like that we played off each other's strengths, but I think I'd have to say a lot that both pieces are, they really are something new for both of us. Neither one is like, oh yeah, that's a Lachlan piece. Or that's a Mark piece.
So what I'm hearing a lot is, instead of the music playing, it's rather a journey of where you're taking us through this journey of music.
We're trying to keep it together for roughly 15 minutes. There's a pretty clear arc, but Mark mentioned we're both improvisers primarily, and when I perform, I will have milestones, but I don't really have a super specific idea of what is supposed to be happening moment to moment. Normally, that means that I'm listening to myself very, very intently and listening to what's happening in the room very intently. And the experience of working with Mark is different is because I'm listening to him specifically, I'm watching him specifically, and so it's almost like giving up control over my own sound to a degree, and kind of like giving it to him so that he can react to it so that I can react to him in kind. It's like a very different cognitive experience trying to interact with the piece in that way. So is it like just trying to keep it together? We know where we're going, but also because we're both improvising, there is a lot of tension there, and I think that's one of the most rewarding things about the compositions that we're playing, is in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't have any. Go.
I was curious about the common ground that you two have with each other of over the conversations you've had that made you realize that you were destined to collaborate.
So, opinionated nerds is what Lachlan said. No, I think the thing that we both thought of is that we both come at music that, despite our sets and our work being primarily improvisatory, we both feel very, I think we both feel very strongly about there being an intentional arc to what you do. I think we both like the idea of theater a lot, and we like the arc of a piece, and we both, when we were talking before we started playing together or deciding to do this, that we like there to be a clear reason and direction, even if individual notes haven't been all prescribed. They don't need to be, but for us, the arc there. Musically, we're also, we both are very careful listeners. There's a lot of times we'd be in the studio working, and I'd be like, "Can you turn the filter on that up just a little bit?" And then, he would say, like, I think if you, play that a little louder, a little softer, be very, very careful balance. It's a little, we probably obsess about it more than actually comes through, but it's how we both think.
I think that is the difference between being an improviser, especially a solo improviser, and playing with other people. That ear training is when you're playing on your own as an improviser, you're listening to yourself in that way, and you're able to make those adjustments on the fly. So learning to do that with somebody else or doing that with somebody else is, you're applying those skills, but the result is very, very different, and it feels very different to try to communicate those things, in my opinion.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, because I love the idea of this whole energy going from one to the other, and you're reflecting it off of each other. I think it's really fantastic.
In the next piece, that's much more explicit, as there's actually one of the wires here has the stuff I'm playing is being sent to Lachlan for processing. So there's a very direct audio interconnection between us that the other piece is just us playing together. This has a lot of that. The next piece is called Drone Beat, for lack of a better name.
Yeah. And before we get into that, we're going to take a short break, about 2 minutes, and then we'll be back on.
Cool. Thank you.